as soon as that hits, it's going to say open Zoom. Once you open Zoom, it's going to go live.
Okay. Live here, ready? I think we're ready. All right. Another episode of Raw Take for CEOs. I'm Dan Gertrudes, and today I've got Korey. Korey's still messing around with some technology there. He'll be joining us in a few.
Love tech.
Love tech. I wouldn't worry about it, man. Cool. So I'm going to get started here. A lot of good stuff happening. Actually, I'm excited for today. We've got a great customer, good friend of ours from Widewail. Matt's the CEO. He's actually been at this for a few years now, but actually before that, he was over at dealer.com, one of the darlings of Vermont's entrepreneurial community. So excited to have him on. June is customer month, customer appreciation, and actually yesterday was customer appreciation day. We were really excited. We kind of broke up, I think, 200 customers into essentially everybody in the company. Called up all of our customers, and we tried to divide it into those team members that actually didn't have an intimate relationship with that particular customer. And so
it was true. We really wanted, and we really valued the true raw feedback from customers. We wanted to share some of that.
Yeah, we're going to share just a few as we slice and dice, and of course we still have a few that are coming in. So next week, Stephen and I are actually going to share with you the good, the bad, the ugly, as I always say. And so that's exciting. And I will tell you, I probably shouldn't say this, but I was actually surprised by the positive spin, the positive feedback that we received from customers. Especially when you give customers, or never mind customers, especially when you give people sort of, okay, 1 out of 10, how would you rank this? Not satisfied, very satisfied, would definitely never refer you, and yes, totally would refer you to the next, to any friend I have. So I was actually proud. And maybe it's a little bit of our style. We're always
Trying to improve,
always thinking about, always concerned, okay.
But I think that the positive for me, at least, kind of says almost just as much as some of the negative sometimes, because I think it enlightens what we should be leading into more on, what are people really valuing, right? What are people talking about? Because that's what they really value. And then let's lean into that, right? Let's double down on that. Let's make sure that doesn't go away. Right?
And so you just brought something up. So there's nothing worse than when vendors or software service providers, when you buy something and someone's like, oh, give me a review or give me feedback, and you don't do squat with it, right? It takes me back to, and I've said this over and over again. So about 8 or 9 months ago, as we made a big push into nationally acquiring customers, we had some customers that would say, dealing with Growth Lab was like dealing with a black box, because you do have the bookkeeping and you have controller level services, the FP&A, the CFO, and the tax side. We're not set up like a traditional professional services firm where you have, say, the managing partner or one of the partners that brings in the customer, coddles the customer, walks the customer over, to that office or to that department, essentially owns the customer. We never wanted to do that. That's not our style. One, we want to create continuity here in ownership, right? We're trying to build something for the long term. And if you're trying to build something for the long term, then the value proposition has to be because of the company. It can't be because of a partner or managing partner or some other manager that could, in essence, walk out the door and take that book of business for them. So we never viewed customers as book of business. So
which is funny, just to touch on that real specifically, because that's one of the feedbacks that we're going to go through today. When we share that is streamlining the team.
Streamlining the team. So that is actually one of the feedbacks that I wanted to share again, quote unquote, streamlining the team. Too many folks on the team. Also, work on response time, end quote. That's, whoever said that kind of touched on two very hot topics in our customer success strategy here. Too many hands in the cookie jar. Who do I talk to? And why does it take you 24 or 48 hours to get a response? Especially when the value proposition we're trying to sell to customers is, hey, we want to be part of your inside team. So totally, that's kind of spot on. And so putting that aside, because we're going to touch on more of that in the coming weeks, and we're actually going to have a couple of customers talk through some of these responses that they gave us. And we're not going to just pick on customers that gave us 10. I do want to get to Matt over at Widewail. This is such a critical part of digital marketing strategy today. It is super how it gets done today is very tactical. But before I get there, taking a step back on the economic side, there's a lot of concerns out there. Inflation, Federal Reserve this week, open market committee. There's going to be a lot of sort of slicing and dicing on what they're saying. That ultimately does impact small businesses. We are seeing a lot of customers right now that are looking to go back to the balance sheet, right? I don't want to say clean up the balance sheet, but tighten up the balance sheet so that they are beginning to push out some of those maturity dates, take advantage of the appetite for refinancing today in the banking industry. So we will be touching on some of that in the coming weeks. Commodity prices, some have fallen off a cliff, whereas others are hitting 2-3 year highs. So,
and I think it will be.
And never mind the labor market still
in disarray. Yeah. But I think it will become a much more important topic as we kind of move forward over the next month or so. We touched on it a lot last year as COVID hit, and it was front and center. We kind of pulled back and focused on more business fundamentals over the past few months, 6 months. And I think we need to touch back on some of those.
Agreed. Yeah, we're going to jump back into that. But with all that said, let's bring Matt on. So we met Matt a few months ago through friends of up in Burlington over at dealer.com or Cox Automotive. And Matt's been a pleasure to work with. So let's bring Matt on. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Matt. We're live.
Hey, we're live.
How's it going, guys?
How's it going, my friend? We were just saying we're actually really excited about Widewail, right? It's a marketing strategy, a marketing tactic that is very hands-on, very tactical, not a whole lot of automation, and frankly, not a lot of people think about what you guys actually can bring to the table. So, Matt, why don't we take this moment to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your company and your journey, how you got here.
Awesome. First, thanks for having me. Again, Matt Murray. I've spent about 15 years as a technology provider. 10 years of that was with a company here in Burlington, Vermont that I was fortunate enough to be with from about, employee 100 to exit. And at that point it was part of a really large company, right? So 30,000 people, multinational business. And just said, I really enjoyed that smaller company feel and the process of building. So found a great company out of Salt Lake called Podium and led their automotive division for a year, and then decided to start Widewail.
Nice. So tell us a little bit about Widewail. One, the problem you're solving for, and two, what you bring to the table for your customers.
Sure. So we're squarely in the reputation management technology and services segment today. We like to think that we're helping create trust between businesses and their communities. Reputation management over the years kind of started as, what's my star rating? Do I have a lot of reviews, right? And It was about whether you were beating your competitor locally in those aggregate sort of vanity metrics. Over the past 10 years, we've seen this move toward local SEO, where Google is able to use the comments of past customers in reviews and even in some ways social to help rank businesses based on a number of factors, including customer experience, right? So when we started Widewail, we said, well, if the customer of a local business is going to be much more digitally native here forward, if they're going to require sort of aggregate opinions from past customers to make a purchase decision, how in the world is a business going to stay on top of that? right? Like generally speaking, you think about a brick and mortar or even a product company, you spend so much time on sales and product delivery, service delivery. How can you staff for this idea of digital engagement? So we looked around the industry and found that most providers were really just on the technology side. And we said, well, how can we make a scalable kind of tech-enabled managed service? How can I install software to monitor the activity around a local business, bring those comments, those reviews to my team, allow us to have first crack at the response, right? You've got a happy customer, let's make sure that they're acknowledged. If we've got an upset customer, let's provide a suggested response to our business, our client, so that they can make a quick decision about how to handle that situation. It's sort of the widely ignored side of reputation management and social, right? The idea of actually responding to everybody, and extraordinarily hard to staff for, as I said. Like what we found over the past few years is that role tends to be 10% of somebody else's job, or our team says they're going to take care of it. Well, what happens when op tempo picks up? Like we sort of drop that 10%. Now we're not taking advantage of this opportunity to engage with our customers and control the narrative around the business online.
Exactly. And let's face it, when you get a bad review, it's too easy and probably very normal to just stick your head in the sand and pretend, sort of ignore it and not deal with it, as opposed to being proactive and dealing with it, replying to that reviewer in real time, dealing with that situation, offering solutions to maybe turn a negative into a positive. And I'll add this other thing. If you look at small business professional services, I'm thinking plumbers, HVAC, electricians, hairdressers, right? When you're actually on Google looking for those services, the CPC costs on those services are through the roof. Like, have you ever Googled like, I need my pipe burst, plumber near me? It's like $50 a click. Whereas with this type of service, you're actually behind the scenes improving your SEO at a fraction of the cost of what CPC for sort of urgent services costs. Mind-boggling.
And it's more of that evergreen style. It's not the rat race of like trying to keep up with it. And I think the other piece to touch on here, it's going to come back to a question for you, Matt, is, what happens when you get reviews? If you're not actively, like proactively, like asking people for reviews, who do you get that's actually doing it, right? You're probably getting the people that are either raving about you or are just.
It's probably your mom and dad if they're raving about you.
Yeah, or they're fed up with you and they're just saying these people suck, right? And speaking from experience, we're down that path of just like cherry picking. Like, okay, we want to ask for a couple of good reviews.
Like we would never ask Matt for a review, right?
I hope we would using Widewail. So you end up in the middle of the road. But Google nowadays is not just taking the pure numerical value of 3.5 out of 5 stars or 4.5 out of 5 stars, right? So there's a lot of other factors that go into just a negative review, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. The first thing you said is a truth in our business. We talk to business owners all the time that don't have a review solicitation strategy. And you take a look at their GMB, for instance, and you mentioned that 3.5. So you're a plumber, you're an HVAC provider, you could be a jeweler, a furniture store, a car dealership, regardless. Any type of local business will tend to have a depressed sort of reputation score if they're not proactively asking. So why is that? Upset people, they find the channel. It's just human nature. They will voice their opinion. They'll get behind the keyboard and let it fly. Those customers, I mean, we see it across every segment. It's I think there's an empowerment factor there, right? And some type of anonymity. So how do we get the 4- and 5-star customer who interacted with the business, had some type of transaction, and normally would never think to share that, right, with sort of the public on a GMB? That's where you've got to ask. I mean, in every case, when we turn on, and this is Widewail Invites, the software side of our business, we turn that product on. A business that got 10 reviews a month is now getting 30 reviews a month. That the bulk of the new reviews are all the happy customers who wouldn't have left that review anyway. Now we're starting to project a more authentic view of what it's like to transact with that business. In Google's eyes, we just, improved volume of reviews, frequency of reviews, the quality's going up, and now you have a response strategy. You clearly care about your business, right? That means Google should be sending you more traffic. And this is the amazing thing about our business is we're living in this world where that map pack that we see on our phones or on our desktop, that is ranked by what Google thinks is not only great for your product search, but also when you leave that phone or you leave that desktop, are you going to have a great experience there? Because I want you to use Google again the next time you need a product or service. So it's a great market share play for Google.
Mhm.
It's a great demonstration of technology, right? That's just amazing.
Symbiotic.
Right. And again, for a business owner, like this should be an automatic, right? This is just an extension of customer service operations.
It's funny. So these guys yesterday, like, oh, we got a new 5-star review on Google. And I said, after talking to Matt, I realized we talk to a ton of people. We talk to people when we're doing sales calls, like purely, self-fulfilling, right? But we also do a lot of work with universities, students, very early on entrepreneurs that we know they're not going to be customers. And God forbid we would never charge them, right? It's just kind of like part of our altruistic, like getting out there, providing that level of developing the ecosystem. We said, well, if we're not going to ask them for money in exchange of value, why don't we at least ask them for a Google review? So you know what the team did? In HubSpot, they created a template in our emails because it's all connected. And now once I get off the phone with sort of a call that a student at Brown University or MIT, and it's just like, hey, did you enjoy the call? Yes. Here, leave us a review. What a great, easy kill. So I'm not on the marketing team, but
That's not easy for every business, right? So most businesses go through this life cycle with reviews where it starts, the owner maybe suddenly gets a negative review and then it's a big deal, right? Let's go get a bunch of positives. So everybody in the business is now asking, and you do that for 30 days because it's an initiative and then it dies again. And the voice of the upset customer starts to kind of dominate the page.
Mhm.
And then we say, okay, well, the owner says, I'm going to spiff everybody. This will work. $5 per positive review, whatever the metric is. That dies again, right? We got training issues. We got op tempo again, as we said. So the automation side of this business now, I mean, you look around, I would bet that close to 20% of local businesses are now automating review solicitation because they understand how important it is to kind of send that more authentic view of the business.
So I'd love to hear your pitch to a customer. Now, how do you sell your value proposition, your platform? Because your evolution, and I kind of know this since we work together, but you've gone from a very high touch sales process or even high touch service to more of that SaaS-based plugin, technology app type of platform.
Yep. So this is great because naturally we're in the beginning of a Widewail pitch right now where we try to reframe the discussion from star rating to local SEO. So we always start by going through kind of 3-4 resources that we've collected over the past, call it 4 years, from third parties. You want to hear from Search Engine Journal or Moz. You want to hear from Google. What do they say about the topic of rep management? They say it's about local visibility. So it's helping the business owner understand that this is really a growth strategy, right? The more you can be preferred online, the more likely you are to be selected. Very, very simple. And then we start talking about the process, like how do we do this, right? And we get pretty deep into the platform. We talk about our integrations with Google, Facebook, Yelp, and other industry-specific sites. We talk about our approach in response, which brings in this conversation of what we call conversational SEO. Like you shouldn't just respond to a happy customer. You should respond to that happy customer with the keywords that drive your business. Like why not feed Google more of your branded terms, more of your product terms, so they better understand what type of traffic you deserve. On the generation solicitation side of the house, we start with the systems. Do you have structured systems that capture all of your transaction data? Sounds like a very basic question. Not every business is there. right? So integrations with HubSpot, key for us. We're working on integrations with systems like MindBody to help the health and wellness sector.
Nice.
Yep. How can we integrate, automate solicitation, and have a really high touch, hands-on, people-powered response to all of those customer comments?
That's smart because so the stuff you're saying we take for granted, because especially in the accounting and bookkeeping world, you sort of have the epicenter being QuickBooks, QBO or Xero, and then you've got all of these ERP, bill pay systems, right? You've got all of these systems, and they're very industry and very industry specific, right? Industry verticals. So obviously MindBody, we know that because we deal with multi-million-dollar yoga shops, right? Co-construct, Service Fusion, especially in the HVAC world, or in the personal, I don't know what you call it, but anyways, right. And so all of these systems are sort of the CRM, and they're the CRM. They're also the engagement agreement. They're like practice ignition for us, right? The engagement agreement, service planning, who's going to go do what, the invoicing, the scheduling, and it all comes in. And then at the end of the day, QuickBooks just sits here and like sucks all that information out of those systems. But that's where you guys kind of come in. You sit on these ERP type of systems and plug in. And so we've got customers that are on a ton of these systems, right? And so much data is in there that you guys could just plug into that stuff. So is that like your next step in your tech roadmap?
Yeah. So because of my background being primarily in automotive digital marketing, we've got a really great integration ecosystem within automotive. We've added systems that cover other verticals as we go. We try to work with a customer. For instance, we have a customer right now who's helping us integrate with ServiceTitan to design this solicitation process for them. Right. The benefit being every other customer who comes to us with ServiceTitan will be ready to go. What I love most about all of these systems in this process is, you mentioned, Dan, you should get a review if you provide sort of pro bono services to a local entrepreneur. That within HubSpot itself can be like a pipeline deal stage, right? So you say to Widewail, like, I want to hit them after we do an interview. I want to hit them after we deliver a pro bono. I want to hit the customer, ask them for a review 60 days after we launch our core services. We have a customer now, for instance, who's wants to ask for reviews after a tour of a property is complete. There's no cemented sort of commercial transaction there, but that's a brand touch point. We ought to use that feedback publicly to help boost the visibility of our brand. And then, of course, let's talk about when they move into the property or move out, or if there's a community event, right?
Yeah,
so
that's like no brainer, right? The post transaction. But I think it's smart, if you're a real estate agent or a leasing operation, thinking about, okay, how do I use this interaction with someone who's really not a customer, may never be a customer, right? How do I use that interaction to increase?
Great example, because just because someone may not have leased that apartment, they may have had a great experience with the realtor.
The wife may not have liked the apartment, but it was a good experience.
How about like Matt? Are there specific industries or verticals that should really be prioritizing this? Like, are there certain verticals that work better than others in this reputation management?
Yeah, so because it impacts local SEO, we tend to think everybody can benefit in one way or another. And as we see it today, it feels like in that adoption curve, the leading 20% of local businesses are starting to really understand and adopt these products. That middle 60%, right? Let's call it 15 million local businesses. They're just learning about it. Maybe they didn't think they were big enough. So that's one perspective. Now, in terms of where our strike zone customer is today, that more considered purchase, right? More competitive. Again, the car dealership, home services, the contractor, jewelry stores and furniture stores, where customers are going to do a certain amount of research. Extraordinarily important. Caveat to all that. I mean, talk about a small business. We have a small business here in Burlington, Vermont called Code Style Club. They're a men's salon. They opened during the pandemic. Amazing, right? You've got a business that requires in-person service. Here we go. They obviously benefited by bringing their book of business, right? Their stylists have a certain book of business that they bring with them. So they had a great start. They started using Widewail because in our local economy, they've got plenty of competitors who are well established. In a period of about 90 to 120 days, they'd surpassed the review volume of all of their competitors. And the owner tells me that when people walk through the door that they've never met before, 80% of them are saying, well, I looked online and it's clear that you're the place that I should get my hair cut. I love that story.
Wow.
It tells me that, and you know, in most segments, it tells me that there's not enough adoption, right? There's a first mover advantage. Like for fun, look up credit unions near you.
Yeah.
They're all like 3 stars, right? It's not that their members don't love them. It's just that they're not paying attention yet to that side of their business. So how do we help them there? I mean, that's our mission. Let's build that trust.
So do you feel like Widewail can work with companies that are not just hyper localized, or, you know, or like a company like ours that can, like, we have customers throughout the United States. As a matter of fact, one of the feedbacks from one of our customer appreciation days, I gotta say, is like, we would like GL Growth Lab would like to have a West Coast office to ease the hour difference in East Coast, right?
I'll volunteer.
All over that. So how does Widewail work with companies that are maybe not geographically constrained, especially in a post-pandemic world?
Yeah, a couple of different ways. One is collecting feedback for your site specifically. So taking cues from e-commerce. The e-commerce world has known this for years. Like if you can get great customer feedback on specific products and services and put them close to the point of conversion on your website, you're giving that next potential customer what they need to transact or to reach out to you. So I would start there. Second, review sites are very different per vertical. So when I talk to a software company, right, G2 and Capterra may be just as important as your GMB, you know? And so the software itself, we don't really, and I say this a little tongue in cheek, we don't care where we send the reviews. We want to be thoughtful and strategic about it, right? But if G2 is more important to your business because that's part of the research for a software company, let's make sure that your profile is optimized to G2.
So you're actually platform agnostic. You're not just focused on Google reviews or Facebook. You can actually integrate with the tech platforms or Yelp, for example, if you're in the restaurant business. So you're able to, and now can you send the same review to 2 different places, or that's a big no-no in the review world?
Yeah, so the way that, and this is good, this is a good thing. Every single review site requires the user essentially to authenticate themselves, right? And this is about preventing fraudulent reviews. So the worst case scenario is, I mean, sometimes you look on Amazon today, people say 5 to 15% of Amazon reviews are fake.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't.
I'll look for the verified purchase.
Yeah.
You can't have that. You just can't. So the user, your customer, has to select the site they'd like to go to. At that point, they leave Widewail, right? They're done interacting with us. They're logging into Google if they need to. Oftentimes they don't have to because of their cache credentials, right? If they're going to Yelp, they need to log into their account at Yelp, so Yelp knows that they're a verified reviewer. I will tell you on that topic, though, we won't take too much time. I was checking it. Yelp is very unique. So if you are a restaurant or a business that thinks Yelp is important, and you start trying to solicit reviews to Yelp, right? You know, you're using some software and that provider says, sure, I can drive people to Yelp.
Yeah.
You'll actually do more damage to your business than good. So they have a very, very well-known philosophy that review solicitation is actually tainting the process. So if you compare a business that has good review solicitation strategy on their GMB or Facebook page to their Yelp page, there's probably a full star difference. There are 4.5 on Google, there are 3.5 or less on Yelp.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I got to tell you, when Yelp first started, and I met one of the, I think he was employee number 10. He actually, I met him in Burlington. He's been an advisor to some Burlington companies. I remember, this goes back 10 years ago, every community had sort of a community advocate. And that advocate was nothing more than a pain in the backside because she would always be like texting and be like, "You're not leaving enough reviews. Can you leave more reviews?" So although the restaurant's not soliciting, Yelp in its nascent days was actually soliciting their Yelp users to leave reviews. So total irony, right? Like,
yeah. So I have a screenshot I keep on my machine that shows what happens if they think you're soliciting. You go to the business page on Yelp, there's a big banner at the top that says, "We've essentially dinged this business because we think that they're soliciting reviews." It's their perspective, but back to our core instincts here, if you don't solicit, your score will be depressed. Yeah. So I look at Yelp scores and say, this is not an authentic view of the business. Best part, Yelp itself. You look up Yelp on Yelp, they're a 2-star business, right? Like, I can't imagine that Yelp's a 2-star business. Like, that's not a genuine view of them.
How about let's take the restaurant example, right? And you can go say Facebook, Google, Yelp, maybe OpenTable, like there's a couple of different places, right? If a restaurant is getting say 10 to 20 reviews a month, right? Is it better to spread those reviews across the platforms, or is it better to just like focus on Google, just focus on one or two?
Yeah. So out of the gate, the first question I always like to ask is, where's your traffic come from? Right. So if you can look and say, well, okay, it's Google dominant, then, well, let's put Google first. So that's an easy decision matrix. However, caveat, the tendency today, the sort of trend that we're seeing is Google is truly taking over the review space. So 2012 to 2017, Facebook was actually the largest review site in the world.
Not forced.
And then, yeah, pretty amazing, right? So then Google overtakes them. And I think this is related, frankly, to the decoupling of the GMB from Google Plus. They've invested a ton of money in the GMB. It's extraordinarily visible now. Today, like, give you an example, last year, 64% of all reviews that came through Widewail were from Google.
Got it.
So you play a little bit to the future here too and say, okay, you really got to make sure that you take care of your GMB and show up well on Google.
Interesting. With that, Matt, and this is kind of I'm sure, difficult question because we don't know, but because Google is constantly iterating, right? Where do you think is next for kind of how they are going to be ranking this, right? We've had previous conversations where you've talked about how it's not just the star, right? But it's how you respond to it. Do you respond to it? The how often you're getting reviews, right? Do you foresee different metrics or different things in the future on how they're going to be managing these things?
I mean, look, everybody wishes that they were behind the cipher lock at Google to talk to the organic team. You can't get there. Here's what I see, though. I see these investments in the GMB as an indicator that your Google My Business page will be essentially your primary website in 3 to 5 years even.
Wow.
Inventory will be there. Obviously, your reservation capabilities are there. Transactions can happen right there on Google.
Shopify by Google.
Yeah, I mean, continue to grow that capability. You will spend more time working on your Google My Business page at some point than you may even on your primary site on your owned domain.
And we already do that internally. How many conversations did we not have about our Google? What is it called? My Google.
Yeah.
Google Plus.
So then, like, to your question about just reputation management, kind of conversational SEO, Google indexes everything on the web. Like, their ability to continue to grow that index and understand the conversational side, the sort of comments and sentiment around your business. I don't think that we're anywhere near the ceiling there. I mean, reviews themselves have grown in impact just since 2017 so much that we're in the middle of it. We're in the middle of this reshaping. So thinking about getting out from, just thinking about your brick and mortar, your face-to-face customer, into that digital world to make sure that the mosaic of interactions, like what are all the different touch points a customer could possibly have, and how do they look this week, right? Because they change. And this is the world we live in, is that your reviews, the picture of your establishment changes week by week based on reviews and comments across 6, 8, 10 different websites.
So this is a good transition because I'd like to hear the two of you kind of geek out to holistically speaking, when we're thinking about digital marketing, we talk about, at least internally, we sort of put it into pillars, right? The inbound marketing, our outbound sales, SEO, paid and promotion, and data analytics. This is just one component, right? So looking at the customer journey, you're generating leads, converting leads, contract engagements, and then customer success, post-transaction, maybe even using this type of platform to capture reviews early on in the lead process. But nothing. So HubSpot is not a silver bullet. Widewail is not a silver bullet. Like, everything has its place. So I'd love to kind of hear you guys geek out a little bit too. If I had a big box and all of these, and if I had tools, HubSpot or some HubSpot version would be in there. A Widewail would probably be in there too, right? What else would be in that big sort of toolbox for the small business? And you and I have had these conversations with our customers, like your SEO, your keywords. Like, we use SEMrush, like we use SEMrush like every day, right? We're on it. We define what content we are going to create based on what SEMrush is. I won't say SEMrush, but what the keywords and organic keywords are telling us for competitors and for us. So what's in our toolbox as a small business?
I'll let you
start.
You start.
You want me to start?
Throw one out.
What else I would say? I'd probably say some form of cold outbound, like outreach.
100%.
Like not necessarily HubSpot, right? Because that has the.
You mean the telephone?
Whether it's the telephone, right, or whether it's like we use Growbots, we've talked about before. Some form of cold outbound outreach.
Yep.
Has to be in there, I think.
Yeah.
That's email
So,
or phone.
Yeah, the digital marketing question is such a broad one. And so when you ask about the local business, I try to let's shrink that down a little bit.
Yep.
How do people find your business? Like, let's just start there. Are you going to be foot traffic dependent for your first 6 months while you build a brand? Are you a digitally native brand and therefore need to be highly visible? Like, those questions have to be answered first. But broadly, I would open up, I go to google.com, just open up a good old search page and search for my products, my services, my brand name. Those will tell you how you're doing competing locally first, right? If you have a niche product, there's not a lot of competition. Do you need to dive directly into paid search? Maybe not on day one, right? So let's get that idea. And then as you move forward, you grow your brand, you start to understand how you're acquiring customers. Then I think it's about sort of diversifying that outreach, right? So we didn't care much about social when we started because it's not, but we've exhausted our SEO strategy. Our paid search strategy is up and running. Now it's time to diversify. Let's see if we can open that umbrella, get some of that traffic that we didn't get for the first 6 to 12 months, continue to grow the brand, right? So I think it's iterative, highly dependent on business model and product, highly dependent on competition.
Love it. So I would definitely, one tool, it's the telephone, the most unutilized medium to connect with a business, a customer. And I get it. We're living in the world of like text messages and maybe not tweets anymore, but everything just disappears in 30 seconds. But the damn telephone, it's such a beautiful thing. And Stephen and I were laying out a marketing plan for actually one of our largest customers, at least top 3 largest customers, and said, if we were in your shoes and we were designing a marketing plan, we would actually incorporate, and you're going to like this, because we actually tried texting too as part of our marketing strategy. It would be, postcards, like print. It's not dead, it's limited. But when you're trying to attract
specific industries,
because this particular industry, actually, Matt, you know who I'm talking about, it's like Tony the Mechanic. Mm-hmm. And he's got like thousands of Tonys the Mechanic. And let me tell you, Tony is not like hanging out on Facebook, right? He's like going through his mail, looking for checks. His admin is like, making phone calls. Yeah. So he's living on his flip phone. He doesn't have an iPhone. Text messaging, number 1. Number 2, pick up the phone and call him. Number 3, postcards. Number 4, cold emails, right? It's that blocking and tackling. And our friend Steve K there from Magic Desk, I love talking to him because you know, he's a young guy. He's relatively young. He's in his 30s. So he didn't cut his teeth in the world of Rolodexes, but damn it, pick up the phone. That was his thing. Pick up the phone. So anyways.
That's how I mean, a little bit about how Widewail has grown. We didn't spend any money on digital advertising until this year. We're about to have our 3rd birthday. And we did that specifically because our goal was to create, you know, a really great outbound machine. Our sales team is unbelievable at picking up the phone, connecting with business owners, enrolling those business owners in sequences so they continually see our message and our brand name. That's how we've grown the business purely. Where other businesses grab a whole bunch of money and throw it at Google. I don't think necessarily, to your point, like depending on vertical, you're never going to get certain business owners, you know, with your digital marketing strategy. So I'm 100% with you. Like our outbound machine is there, and now we're going to develop a great inbound machine and marry the two.
And that's why when we spend, at least myself, when we spend time with customers on the CFO and FP&A side, I do dig into that customer acquisition cost, because customer acquisition cost isn't just the $50 CPC. It's more like 50 times the 5, you know, divided by the 5,000, and you're only getting 2 customers out of that 5,000 to come in and fix your pipes. That's not going to work, right? That doesn't make sense. So I'm going to end it at this. You know, we started our journey in earnest like 5-6 years ago. Maybe in earnest would be like 3 years ago. But we started our marketing journey 6 years ago. Korey was still an intern at St. Mike's. And we internally have referred to our marketing experience as sort of like the unintentional journey, right? We had no intentions. We were just spitballing. We were trying different things. We would spend money on Facebook, Google ads, and this and that. And it was once we were able, because we never built, we didn't bring people that had the capability with all the digital marketing. We experimented a lot. And 7 years later, like we feel like we're at a point where through all of our learnings, bruises, right? We have a lot of scars to prove for it. We've kind of been able to say, okay, here's what works, and here's when you have to start using it. As opposed to, let me just throw $1,000 at Google ads and hope to God something's going to come up. It's just like, dude, that's $50 a CPC for a $150 visit. It doesn't make sense.
I think people are taking this bucket approach of, well, my competitor's doing Google ads. I'm going to be doing Google ads.
Yeah, let him do Google ads. You'll bankrupt himself into doing Google ads. When your Google reviews are right below his Google ads.
But I think it comes back, Matt, exactly to what you said, which was it depends on where you are at the business. Are you just starting out, or are you 20 years old? And then what are you really trying to accomplish with this? It's unique. So
cool.
But
any final thoughts, Matt?
No, look, I mean, we're proud to be where we are today. We've got an exceptionally fantastic client base. I mean, that's really driven by the managed service. Our connection there is great. Our churn is really low. We're proud of that, right? So we're glad to be working with you guys and have the opportunity to address your audience.
Yeah, appreciate it, Matt. And I'm sure some of our customers are going to be calling you. I've already made a couple of intros. So cool, Matt. Appreciate it. And that's this week's Raw Take. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks,
Matt.
Cheers.
See ya.